Welcome to the 8 Minute Rule podcast, where actual physical therapists share clinical pearls designed to create conversation around what's getting results in the clinic. No fluff, no Medicare stopwatch, only quality content. Welcome back to the 8 Minute Rule. I got Mark and Drew with us here today, and we are going to finish up the conversation we had the previous week in regards to mentors' perspective and kind of some guidance there. I want to flip the script here and start to look at the mentee's perspective. However, before that, to start off with an icebreaker question here, it's a two-parter. So, at what point are you putting up Christmas decorations, and is it a real or an artificial tree?
Not until after Thanksgiving is when it's appropriate to put up Christmas decorations. We have an artificial tree, but I do like real ones more. We have some allergy issues, and then we've also had a pretty bad experience with a real tree one time, but I still like them better.
They catch on fire.
I need to know.
Almost.
I was about to say, I
It
need more
was
details about that bad experience.
about a week before Christmas. It had almost no needles on it, no matter how much we watered it. I took it outside and dropped it, and everything fell off. Like, it was so bad. And we ended up getting our artificial tree that year, and it's stuck since then. And then we also, one of my daughters has pretty bad allergies to almost all trees. And she was pretty young at that time, but it's gotten a little worse. So we haven't even tried to get it back yet so that she can breathe when she's home.
That is important. And kudos on taking one for the team there. All right, Mark.
Agreed. We're going after Thanksgiving. There's not like a set weekend or set date that we do it, but sometime after Thanksgiving and hopefully before Christmas. And we definitely go artificial for just ease and simplicity.
Take it. I'm old school. I like the real tree, and I like to support local farmers to some degree. So I probably overpay for it, but it's a big deal in my household. My wife keeps pushing, and I'm sure one day we'll go the other way. But we're here for now. So, all right, good stuff. Appreciate that, guys. Let's talk again around the mentee's perspective here. So, first question thrown out to you guys. What would you guys recommend in looking for when it comes to picking out your mentor? And Drew, why don't you start us off?
I think one of the main things is when you're looking for a mentor, find somebody who's where you want to get to, somebody who's done the things that you want to. Like, if somebody were to say, hey, I want to work with high-level athletes, and that's not my caseload, I probably wouldn't be the best mentor. There's things that you could get from me, I think, and I could help you out with clinical decision making and things like that. But if your ultimate goal is saying, hey, I want to work with high-level athletes, and I don't work with a lot of high-level athletes, it might not be the best one. Like, I would say, why don't you go talk to Mark, because he's the one that does that.
I think that's helpful. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think also looking for someone that is, one, open to other ways of doing things. You don't want to find somebody that's like, this is the way to do it, and there's no other way. That's usually not going to allow you to be yourself as a PT, as a provider. And then two, it is probably for your primary mentor, you want someone like what Drew is describing, and then it wouldn't be a bad idea to get someone that has not like in a totally different like area, but like a different perspective, so that you can ultimately form into what you want to be as a provider and have a well-rounded mentoring experience, essentially.
I like that. The find a mentor, not a guru, is kind of the quote that I would think of in that scenario that you were talking about, Mark.
Yeah, I like that. Both points. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of value in looking at somebody in terms of where they're at. You know, that's going to be a great tool in terms of picking your guidance there. But I also appreciate your side, Mark, in terms of somebody that has kind of a well-rounded perspective. And I think it still goes to, especially, and we didn't really put parameters on this, but are you talking about strictly as a new grad versus somebody that's kind of gotten their baseline foundation? Now they're trying to go more into their niche and working in a perspective there. But especially from a new grad standpoint, there's just so much value to being able to be that generalist, right? And be able to kind of work into all aspects, and then potentially kind of the mentorship filtering more into a specific direction as well there too. So I think early on, there's a big value to be able to work with a mentor that does see a lot of things, that does have a lot of gross perspectives in there, and being able to do so. So just kind of a spin-off of that question, we hope that this doesn't happen much in our profession, but unfortunately it does. Somebody gets hired, and students as well have to go through this. You don't get to pick your CIs very often, but let's say you're assigned a mentor. You've gotten put with somebody that maybe they don't do the kind of treatment that you're potentially looking at or wanting to grow to. I know I had a CI when I was in school that just did straight McKinsey, and there's some awesome things about that. But it was her vantage point was completely hands off, and it was spinal extensions for everybody that walked in the door, even that ankle sprain. When you have a situation where you're a mentee looking for mentorship, but you've gotten put with somebody that maybe doesn't necessarily fit what you really want to do, you can't solve everything. But just kind of give me some advice of what you would do in a situation like that. Mark, you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, it's tough when you're a student because there's like a power dynamic, like you're trying to pass and you got to do whatever you need to pass. Once you're out practicing, you usually have some flexibility and potentially changing if it's just not going to be a good fit. But one silver lining is take what you can from it. You talked about the McKinsey provider that you were with. There are some concepts within that are absolutely, best practice for certain things, right? Certain conditions. And so there's a lot you can learn from that. So take that with you. But then it might be that you have to have a totally candid conversation with that person and be like, I certainly appreciate what you're providing. And obviously, like, you speak to patient outcomes. This is a different perspective than kind of where I'm at and where I want to go. Would you be open to me trying some different things with some of the patients? And, even from the mentor side of things, like if mentee comes to me and says something like that, I'm like, hey, test, retest, prove it to me. And if it works, I'm not going to say, that was stupid, unless it was totally off the wall. But and we're not breaking out the ultrasound machine. But like, as long as they're not causing any harm and they have a good rationale, like, you should be open to that kind of procedure and see what happens.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of pointing as well back to what kind of individual are you looking for to be your mentor. Humility can be one, right? Like it's not so much about me being right; it's about the patient getting better. And I think that's a really cool way to approach it in your communication. What you think, Drew? Anything to add?
Yeah, I like the idea of making sure that you have that conversation around it. Don't necessarily be afraid to. That's another great opportunity of get comfortable being uncomfortable. And like you said, what can you learn in each and every situation? I think if for the most part, mentors, if you're a CI, you want to give back, help the student get where they want to be. So 99% of the time, if you have that conversation, they're going to be open to it and making sure that you are proactive in learning, getting what you can from that mentor, but also making sure you get what you need as well. That might be, hey, I know you're not the expert here. Here's what I'm interested in. Let me try it, like Mark said. And you're going to have to do some of the legwork to maybe do some more research and figure things out rather than them giving you a little bit more of their expertise and experience. But again, making sure that you get what you need out of it is key. So it's not a passive position where you're just there and like doing what they say. If you have your specific goals of what you want to learn, whether that be week by week or big overarching long-term goals, like I said, 99% of the time, any mentor CI is probably going to help you get there. And that actually makes it even easier for me as a mentor of knowing, all right, here's where you want to go. I'll absolutely give feedback into where I might see some areas of strengths and weaknesses that they can work on. But if there's a specific goal, like that's definitely going to be front and center as well.
Yeah, I love it. It's good stuff. I guess the kind of thinking through that and just spinning off that a little bit as well too. You guys kind of went into some pretty good points around how mentees can be giving feedback to some degree, but just push on that a little bit more. You got one piece of advice you can give mentees from you guys as a mentor perspective, things you may see in terms of them giving you feedback, just kind of thinking through some things that you've seen in practice that can be really helpful. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so part of my job as a mentor is going to be to poke at areas where you're uncomfortable or areas where I see deficits and try to improve those, right? And so you don't need to necessarily tell me those areas, but if there's something specifically that you need from me, whether that be a certain type of feedback, you need more targeted goals, you need something, let me know what that is. Just say, hey, I need this and let's make it happen. And I think that's super helpful for me because like what Drew was saying is like helps me be focused on what you want and what you actually need out of this. Like I know you need to, find your blind spots. I know that you need to get better at these areas. Like we're working on that. But if there's something else that I'm missing, similar to a patient, like, hey, is there another goal that I haven't worked towards yet with you? Like, let's do it.
Yeah, good thoughts. Drew, anything to add?
I kind of forget what your question was originally, to be honest.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially looking at, as a mentee, just some pearls you can think through about times that either you've been given feedback or just kind of ways that feedback have not been helpful versus a way that they can be more helpful and fruitful.
As a mentee, well, maybe this is a different way to look at it, but if you're concerned about getting right, you're probably going to struggle, or being right, you're going to struggle. If you're concerned about getting better, things are going to go much better for you. Again, it's that what can I learn in this situation versus am I right or not? I know going through the fellowship, which is like we had some mentees or mentors who were very direct, and the people who struggled the most, maybe didn't finish it or anything like that, like who said this program isn't for me, are the ones who were typically concerned about being right and less concerned about growing and what can I take away from this. So I think that's a big piece, and at the same time, like I said, being proactive of this is still what I need. Does that answer the question that you
Absolutely.
asked? Okay, great.
Yeah, no, I actually was thinking very similar. I can think of a student probably in the last couple years that was working with another PT, and they just had an agenda. I mean, they were just, they wanted to prove the CI wrong all the time, and that doesn't happen a ton. But I think there was just something around it for me that was kind of really obvious around, as a student, just similarly to when you're working with a patient and you would love for your CI to be not just slamming you down in front of a patient, having more of the encouragement communications. I think it's great. I mean, every mentor should want to be challenged on some degree. Like, hey, I think there's a ton of value when patients hear our reasoning because patients don't know the knowledge that we have. And a lot of times when you're working with a mentee, you are getting them to give you communication that's actually showing the patient how much they know. And I think that's a really cool setup to it. But to your point, if your goal is just trying to be right versus trying to grow and see what you can take, it's just not going to be a good relationship. And so I think checking your biases on that, checking them at the door and having good conversations on that is really important.
Yeah, I had something almost the opposite, actually, of what you were saying, where I had a student who probably one of the best experiences I've had. He was a phenomenal student. He was dead set on neuro, going to a neuro residency. That is not my wheelhouse whatsoever. So I was a little concerned at the very beginning of the rotation, and as we started going, I said, all right, well, think of it from a neurological perspective. And so you could kind of tap into his brain and how he was thinking, whether it be ortho, like everything is somewhat neuro. But he learned stuff from me. I learned a lot of stuff from him. And it was a really good experience. It was probably one of my favorite because I learned a lot, both from, I think, a mentoring perspective of here's what you want to learn, here's where you want to go. So how do we make sure you get that? Like, there's still a lot to learn here. But he was phenomenal with that. Just looking at it from a different point of view, and like Mark said, tell me what you think. He was like, I'm looking at it from here. What do you think? And it was like, let's go. It would work a lot of times, so it was great. It was a really good experience.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. It made me think of a student I had 2 years ago that dead set on pediatrics coming in. We had that conversation early on. She was excited to work in the ortho rotation, but she was all about pediatrics. And so we probably had like 3 or 4 patients come in the pediatric range. And I mean, she just lit up and it was awesome. And the whole clinic lit up with it, like in terms of things she was doing kind of outside the box. And for me, it was a great challenge to remind myself, like, hey, I can also push to help patients have fun. Like you
Yeah.
obviously have to when you're working with pediatrics. And I think it was a reminder to me and hopefully to students or individuals that are being mentored, to the mentees, you have a lot of value to add and you have strengths. And just because you're working with somebody who's trying to push you into places you're uncomfortable, lean on your strengths and utilize your strengths, because they're going to really be able to not only bring a lot out in terms of your growth, but also the clinic and the people around you as well too. And so, very cool. I appreciate you sharing that thought. So, as you can see, advice across the board for mentees is you got to be proactive. Mentorship is not the responsibility of the mentor, right? And if anything, it's more the responsibility of the mentee. And the more proactive you are, the better it's going to go, because you get to really push on what you want out of it. And so, I think that's probably one of our biggest pieces of advice here is don't let everything happen to you, but go ahead and be proactive with it. Check your ego at the door and really work with your mentor on that as well too. Cool. All right, guys. Appreciate it. Good stuff. Until next week.
Thank you.